Stone Cold Steve Austin, appearing on the BrewBound Podcast. Of course, if you've never heard of the BrewBound Podcast, you are not alone, because I have also never heard of it until I did this episode. But apparently it's just a beer podcast into like microbreweries and that kind of thing. I don't fucking know. IPA, whatever the fuck that is. I'm not a beer guy, okay? But apparently this podcast there's enough content out there for a whole podcast on beer. So they had Stone Cold Steve Austin and, of course, his friends from the Segundo Brewing Company. And that was kind of the hook to get him on the show, as the show was mainly just about the beer, this Broken Skull IPA and the Broken Skull Lager that Stone Cold's come out with. But there were a few wrestling-related gems in this podcast episode as well. Specifically, at the very end, the host asked Stone Cold Steve Austin what his chances are of if he will ever step back in the ring again, or if this last WrestleMania was just the itch that he needed to scratch and he's all set now. Check out what Stone Cold had to say.
So, Steve, for starters, how are you feeling physically after WrestleMania?
Oh, I'm 100%. I picked up a little bit of a cold the other day, but I'm back home in Nevada. Shoot, Sunday I was 100%. And then, of course, I went back into action on Sunday, did a little extra physicality as part of the show. But you know, it's just an exciting time for me to go back to, you know, a business that I really, really love. And, you know, I never thought I'd be back in the ring, but, you know, there we were headlining main event for headlining WrestleMania for, you know, night one. And it was just truly an honor to be out there.
Well, we know that WrestleMania is right in El Segundo's backyard next year. So are we going to see you in the ring again, crushing broken skulls after a match next year? Or is this, have you scratched that itch?
Well, you know, for me to participate in WrestleMania 38, if you'd have told me, hey, man, you're going to be part of WrestleMania 38, not only that, you're going to main event night one, I would have said, you're full of shit and you're crazy. And there I was in Dallas, Texas, you know, headlining main event on day one. So never say never, but I would really imagine that within the scope of that show, that's going to be a big show in a big time city, and it'll be a 2-night event again. So I'm not, you know, I'm sure I'm done wrestling per se, but as a part of the, you know, as part of WWE, I can't imagine that I would not be there in some capacity. And I'm not saying I'm not booking myself on the show, because I didn't book myself on 38. That's a Vince thing. And I have a great relationship with him. And if I get the call, I'll be there.
So he says that the in-ring part of his career is done now. To be honest with you, though, I don't know if I believe him. Because in the very same breath, he said, but, you know, if Vince wants me or needs me, I'll be there. And I know he didn't necessarily mean that as an in-ring capacity as much as just being a part of WrestleMania. But I think Steve's proven both to himself, to WWE, to the fans, that he can still go at the level that we would need a Stone Cold Steve Austin to go to. You know, I've said this before on the show that Stone Cold doesn't need to. He was never he was a technical wrestler before his neck injury. You know, he's a very good technical wrestler before his neck injury. But after that, it was punch, kick, stomp, middle finger, mud hole, Luthez press. I mean, him busting out suplexes at WrestleMania on the stage blew my mind. That was more than I had expected or had any right to ask for out of Stone Cold Steve Austin. So as soon as he was busting those bitches out, I was like, all right, we're on. And, you know, as you watch the match, you can see that Stone Cold started off really slow, and then he started to kind of warm up, you know. He got either just the ring rust wearing off, or if he just kind of was starting to loosen up. You know, he was starting to get into the point where, hey, we can actually, I can actually go. These bumps feel fine, and they don't hurt. I'm moving good. Let's go. Let's keep it going. Let's try some shit, you know. So I wouldn't doubt if a lot of that match was played by ear, just to see, they might have had a framework planned out, but I think a lot of it was probably dependent on how Steve was feeling after the first few bumps. But he did great, and he proved to everybody that he can still go in that capacity. Nobody needs Stone Cold to go out there and have a 5-star technical match. All we need him to do is stomp a mud hole in somebody's ass, walk it dry, flip him off, and drop the stunner. It's not going to take a whole lot. He's in great shape. Physically, he looks amazing, right? He's beefy as all fuck still. He doesn't got a beer gut going on or anything like that. He looked like in great shape. Cardio-wise, he was able to hang with Kevin. He might have got blown up a little bit in that match, but not to the point where it stood out or hindered the match in any way, shape, or form. I think you got to have a good opponent. Kevin Owens was the best opponent Steve could have had. I said a couple weeks ago that it was a little bit of a weird choice to have your comeback match after 19 years against Kevin Owens. Not that Kevin Owens isn't a star or a great worker. And in fact, I had also said on that same podcast that Kevin Owens was, as far as an in-ring opponent for Stone Cold, he was probably the best choice. He was going to take great care of Steve. He's going to be able to do that brawling style. And as you've seen, it played out perfect. They did the walk and brawl over the arena. It was a fucking amazing match for what it was. For Stone Cold at his age, after 19 years, fucking A-right, he nailed it. But Kevin doesn't exude, he's not the Rock or John Cena or even CM Punk at the time, where Punk was possibly angling for a match with Stone Cold, right? Those are matches I wish we would have gotten, but we're here now. And I think with Stone Cold now seeing, because he also said in this interview, I felt fine, the next day I felt great. I even went back out there, did some more shit in the ring with Vince. Like, he wasn't that beat up. He's moving around good. He didn't make an ass of himself. He liked it. He had fun. I just don't see any reason other than just pure stubbornness, which got us this far, right? Stone Cold has been stubborn as all hell for the last 19 years, refusing to get back in the ring. And he was the one holdout. But we've kind of gotten to this point in wrestling now where we never say never about anything. Before it was, The Undertaker's never going to lose his streak. Well, he lost his streak. CM Punk's never going to return to wrestling. Well, he returned to wrestling. And now Stone Cold Steve Austin was that big holdout. Well, we'll never see Punk came back, but we'll never see Stone Cold come back. It's been too long now, blah, 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 blah. Nope, he came back. So I am a firm believer that at this point in professional wrestling, there is no such thing as never. It doesn't exist in wrestling. There's always a price. There's always a reason. There's always a place, a time, etc. I think Stone Cold will have more matches. I don't think, as a wrestler, I don't think that itch is ever scratched. To kind of answer that question, was your itch scratched on this one? I think if it had to be his last match ever, if he just was never going to be invited back again or something to that effect, I think he'd be happy with it. He should be. It was the main event. He went over. He didn't embarrass himself. He looked very good. It was a huge success by all accounts, right? By every metric available, Stone Cold's return was a huge success. So if he had, and it was in, roughly his hometown, his home state, the first city he ever wrestled. So I think if he had to hang him up, that's the perfect way to do it. But I just don't see him. I mean, if he still has the ability to work that bare minimum Stone Cold match, Vince is going to find a need for that. They're going to try to squeeze him in on one of these Saudi blood money shows. They're going to try to get him at another WrestleMania. And if I were Steve, I'd be very cautious about this. It's hard because when you're an artist and you create a body of work, you kind of want to, it's important to think that you went out on top. Like had Ric Flair's last match been Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 24, it would have been the most beautiful ending to a storied career. but he had to go on and have those couple extra matches in TNA, which just squandered the whole thing. But I think as an artist, the romantic idea is to end your career on the high note. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of these guys are just built to go until the wheels fall off. And it doesn't matter if it's in a high school gym or in a fucking football stadium, you know? So I think for the right price tag, you know, the ridiculous millions of dollars that would get paid out, I think we will see Steve Austin at a Saudi Blood Money show, probably another WrestleMania, but Steve's got to be cautious about who he's working with, what kind of match he takes, and if he's going to start losing and doing jobs. Not that he needs to stay dominant, you know, but he's just got to be cautious is all I'm saying. But yeah, I fully expect to see more Stone Cold Steve Austin in the ring, but if not, what a fucking way to go out. And I'm just really proud of Steve because I know how important it is to him to keep his credibility and to look good in the ring and not be a shell of who he used to be. And even though we know that the Stone Cold that we got at WrestleMania wasn't the Stone Cold of old, it was so close for what it needed to be. It was perfect. So, you know, one of my childhood heroes still doing his thing, and hopefully we get to see more in some way, shape, or form.
Let me tell you something, brother. You can check out full episodes each and every Sunday right here on this channel, dude. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to take your vitamins and say your prayers, brother.